All right, everybody, welcome back to Gridiron Gang, a Detroit News Lions podcast. Big news coming out of Allen Park today. The Detroit Lions agreeing to terms with superstar edge rusher Aidan Hutchinson. We're going to talk about all of that on today's episode. But before we do that, we got to preview this game with the Minnesota Vikings. And to do that, we have the world's biggest Jared Goff fan on the line with us. And fortunately, for our purposes, he's also a Minnesota Vikings reporter. So please join me in welcoming in Matthew Coller from PurpleInsider.com. Matthew, how are we today?
Let me fire off a crazy take. Signing Aidan Hutchinson, good job, Lions. Well done.
Yeah,
there you go.
And credit to you, because we're doing a home and home here, where I was on your podcast just before this, and before we started recording, we were talking about a potential Aidan Hutchinson extension down the road. I asked, hey, Matthew, what do you think this guy's going to make when he finally gets his extension? And you said, I don't know, something like 4 years for $45 million per year. You nailed it. It's 4 years, $45 million per year. So the Lions get that done. And obviously we'll probably wax poetic about that on the other side of this podcast. But curious, Matthew, what are your thoughts on this contract?
Well, I think hold on, my dog has grabbed his favorite squeaky toy.
Your dog is a big Aidan Hutchinson fan.
Yeah.
There's Koala, his favorite toy,
Aww.
which also makes the loudest noise. So the extension, I think with teams that are in a position like this of the Detroit Lions, who have drafted a ton of players that have become big hits for them, what ends up happening is you create a window for yourself. You sign all these guys to extensions, Penei Sewell and Amon-Ra St. Brown. You pay them what they're worth, and eventually that will become a challenge for you. But it's not today that it's becoming a challenge for you, especially when you have a fairly high-paid quarterback. This is a similar spot that the Vikings were in 2018 and 19, where they had a bunch of their star players and their Pro Bowlers signed to contracts from the 2017 team that went to the NFC Championship. And then they had basically 2 years to win a Super Bowl. As you guys are well aware, they did not win the Super Bowl in those 2 seasons. And then in 2020, eventually the wheels came off contract-wise, and the salary cap did turn out to be real at that moment. They had Kirk Cousins under contract. But I think what they've done here is they've created a window, maybe 3 more years, where Jared Goff is playing his best football. You've got all your superstars under contract, and then they can rebuild the other parts through the draft. And as we've seen, the Detroit Lions, and look, I tend to think drafting is random, and the Lions' great drafting has been a lot about being super high for a little while there and also having a million picks. But at the same time, like, they've proven to be pretty good at this. So I think they'll be able to fill in other spaces around some of these huge contracts. But I think it does create a very clear, the next 2 years, the next 3 years, like, this is your time as a franchise to get the job done.
Now, we're going to talk about this game this weekend in a second, but I don't really know if it's all that interesting, to be quite honest with you. I think all 3 of us sitting in this room here project some sort of blowout. But there were a couple weeks ago, I was arguing with people online about Jared Goff's viability as an MVP candidate in the National Football League. And that was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, because you DM'd me and you were like, hey, I agree with you. The disrespect is crazy. So I'm just curious from your perspective. We won't spend too much time on this because we've already ranted and raved about this. We got jalapeno analogies, all those sorts of things. But what is your perspective on Jared Goff and what makes him a good quarterback in this league?
Well, I think we've gotten to a point in the NFL where the 3 best quarterbacks in the NFL are very clear. It's Josh Allen, it's Lamar Jackson, and it's Patrick Mahomes. And all 3 of them play in a certain way, which includes scrambling around, making crazy plays, being meme quarterbacks sometimes, where it's a picture of Patrick Mahomes 2 inches off the ground. It's like, he completed this pass, folks. And I am as captivated and wowed and blessed to watch these 3 quarterbacks play football. It's so much fun. It's backyard football. And Jared Goff plays much more in the Tom Brady and Peyton Manning and Drew Brees type of way. But I think that we would all be right in saying that he's not quite on the level of Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, and Drew Brees, arguably 3 of the top 10 quarterbacks in the history of the game. But when you look at how he gets his success. It's delivering the football on time to the right place, pre-snap stuff. And is that as exciting? Can you get everyone hyped up on the internet with, guys, did you see how he identified that inverted cover 2 and like threw an 8-yard hitch to Amon-Ra St. Brown that turned into 14 because of the yak, because he knew where the space was? That's just not quite as sexy. I also think too, so it's style. And style points matter a lot on the internet. But another thing is too, that a lot of folks decided when he was traded by the Rams that he was not good, that he was just a total product of Sean McVay, that he was an invention of McVay and that supporting cast and that offense, and that he was never going to be anything in Detroit. And if you Google this, it's real. The Lions should draft Malik Willis, number 2 overall, was a real take from real analysts that still make money doing this, which is amazing to me. It's one of the worst takes, I think, ever. I mean, considering how well Goff has played, how Malik Willis was not even a first-round draft pick. But you think about just that perception that McVay must be right, Jared Goff must be bad, and that he's just going to be a bridge quarterback to get them through their tank. I think that the folks who thought that didn't watch a lot of what Jared Goff actually did in Los Angeles, but also there's a thing called growth. And I think that he has grown into his own as a quarterback to where no longer is McVay's offense run by Jared Goff. It is Jared Goff's offense. And this is where I don't think people give him enough credit for being an MVP style quarterback, is that this is him. It is his invention along with Ben Johnson that is now carried over to John Morton, just like the way that Peyton Manning used to run all the meetings for the Indianapolis Colts offense, or Tom Brady made it his offense. Goff has done the same thing. And if he does reach a Super Bowl, then you'll have a lot more people talking about it. But I think the playoff failures, I know he can't catch the ball for him, Josh Reynolds, but the playoff failures have, I think, exacerbated, like the people who are, sliding down the slippery wall screaming, Jared Goff still sucks. Like, at least they have those playoff games, but the evidence has just grown and grown and grown that he is truly an elite quarterback that has a chance to win a Super Bowl every year he's under center.
All right. Let's spin it forward to this weekend. Lions minus 8.5 against the Vikings. I want
to talk about Jared Goff more. Okay?
Over under set at 48.5. Richard, what questions do you got for Matthew for this weekend's game?
Yeah, I was going to say, Matthew, another quarterback that people don't have any strong opinions about, that are just, that are level-headed and they're not looking to get off any hot takes. JJ McCarthy expected to start this week. What are your expectations? What are the vibes? What is the elevator pitch of JJ McCarthy this week look like?
Well, I mean, the vibes are, it feels like a hard reset on the entire season. I mean, this is one of the stranger seasons I've ever covered because it feels like it never started. They went to Chicago. He has the big moment at the end of the game, the comeback. He looks great. And even through the early parts of that game, I don't think he was that bad. I think that as a team, they did not play well around him, but we thought, okay, like this is what we expected from JJ McCarthy, some spectacular playmaking with his legs. The arm talent was showed off a handful of times. And then, hey, he's the guy that the stage is not going to be too big for. Everybody in Michigan is well aware of the games that he played there, and it didn't look like he was intimidated by the national stage. And then the following week, and it was a short week, and his fiance had a baby in the middle of the week, so he missed some time there, and then, that's quite a life event to go on. And he comes out against Atlanta and just struggles top to bottom. Couldn't get the ball out on time, took a lot of hits. They had backup offensive linemen in, which they couldn't make up for. Thought that he was just late on a lot of throws and not identifying things. And then we have not seen him since. And it has just been miserable for everyone, where, look, Carson Wentz tried as hard as he could. But it's a backup quarterback situation. And anytime you have the backup playing, it feels like you're in purgatory as a franchise. I'm sure that Cincinnati feels this way, or Atlanta when Kirk is playing, or Carolina when Andy Dalton is playing. It's like, what are we really gaining here? because you're trying to find out and get a bigger sample size on the young quarterback. So they tried to survive that. They couldn't. Now they're 3-4. Now it feels like the competitive part of the season is over, and it's all to what JJ McCarthy can do. But the problem with putting so much on a game like this against a super talented Detroit defense that I think is more complex than it has been in the past, shows a lot more looks than we would have seen from Aaron Glenn, is that JJ McCarthy missed an entire year of being able to practice, had this training camp, and then has just missed a bunch of weeks where he hasn't really been able to practice in full. This week is his first full practice since getting hurt against the Atlanta Falcons all the way back in week 2. So how high are we able to really set the bar? And as you guys know, every single game is a referendum on what a quarterback is. If Jared Goff has a bad game, it's, I told you, Jared Goff, I told you he wasn't any good. But in this world of the hot take, of the, you turn on the TV and someone is screaming at you with a massive overreaction, it feels like this one is built for that because they are at a pretty distinct disadvantage. I think where we set the bar is if JJ McCarthy can move this offense, can make some plays, can look fairly comfortable, that it will release a lot of the tension that is around the Minnesota Vikings right now, because this whole thing was supposed to be built around him. If they get blown out 38-3, it's going to feel like, what even is the Minnesota Vikings as a franchise? Even if they lose 38-20 and he looks pretty good, it's like, okay, well, all right, he's back. And now that's something to focus on week in and week out. And you're not always going to play the Detroit Lions, and they can build on this. So that's what you're really looking for, or at least I think reasonable minds should be looking for. I think there's a lot of Vikings fans who have built up a myth of JJ McCarthy, that he is larger than life type of quarterback that's going to save the franchise. And I think that's a little high to set that bar for this week against Detroit.
Well, and all of this comes on the heels of what I think has been Kevin O'Connell's maybe first, I don't even want to call it a crisis, but like the way we talked about him at the end of last year, and I think rightfully so. I don't change anything about what I felt about him, but just like, man, he has all like at least in the context of comparing him to Dan Campbell, you're like, man, Kevin O'Connell, he's got all these emotional intelligence qualities that Dan Campbell has, but he also has this weird thing where he can work with any quarterback that he wants, and he's going to figure out a way to make it work. And you see the post-game videos and the way that he talks to guys, and you read the stories from wonderful Vikings reporters such as yourself, and you're like, man, this guy is like true salt of the earth. This feels like the way they handled the Carson Wentz injury situation, him playing through a torn labrum for 2.5 games. Is that right? Feels like the first big stain on what we know about him and how he cares for players, how he runs his program, all of these things. Do you sense any sort of like shifting in the vibe just around the team facility or around the fan base or the way people think about Kevin O'Connell?
Yeah, I mean, the team facility, that's a little harder to say. You guys know about, being in locker rooms for 3 hours a week, and we can't always say what's really going on in there. But I do think that even when you go back to the offseason and the decision to go to JJ, there was a bit of people looking around inside that building and going, are we really doing this? Like, after getting 35 touchdowns and 4,000 yards and Aaron Rodgers offers to come play for your team, you're going to go to a quarterback who's never played before and only threw 700 passes in college? Like, are you sure? And the thing that they kept coming back to is, we know what you have in McCarthy because we saw him behind the scenes, and look at all the money we can spend around him to build up the offensive line, to build up the defense, and have this super roster that all he has to do is be Brock Purdy. All he has to do is be Jalen Hurts, just, guide the ship, and you're going to be okay. Now, the logic of that is all right, but when half the defense gets hurt, the offensive line gets hurt, all of a sudden that whole story looks a lot different. And now you're asking JJ McCarthy to be more than you expected. And then he gets hurt. And so everyone's looking around going, what now? Right. And you're watching Darnold thrive. You're watching Rodgers play well. You're watching even Bo Nix, who they didn't draft, have success. And I think anytime that happens in an NFL building, there is concern. But when you talk about that Wentz thing, This is where I have felt a shift from the fans for the first time. Not only just because of what happened with Wentz, they're down 34-10. And this guy has a torn labrum and his shoulder is separated from the socket or something, which sounds insane to even be on a football field. And Kevin O'Connell called 4 straight pass plays. 34-10, 7 minutes left in the game. And you go, what the heck was that? Like, did you just sort of lose the thread of the game? Were you frustrated and just kept pushing the pass button with no regard for human life? Like, what exactly happened there? And the explanations have not been satisfactory to the fans. And I think that I've gotten probably, 20 to 30 messages from fans saying, I was always the biggest KOC defender, but this is the first time where I've gone, what is going on there when you can't manage that situation? And I've seen a bunch of people say, well, Carson Wentz said he was good to go. Yeah, but there's a guy in the corner of every boxing ring who has a white towel. And so somebody's supposed to be the one who's paying attention, who throws in the towel. And to not do that and to have those images fused in people's heads. Like right now, if you asked Vikings fans, hey, what's the one image of the 2025 season? It's Carson Wentz throwing his helmet, broken down on the sideline, and then going out for the next the next drive, right? I mean, so I do think that had an impact. And I did have one person in the league say to me, like, this is how you kind of lose players, as when you don't protect them from themselves, even though you tell them over and over how much you love and care about them. So you have to make sure you're backing it up as well. But I also think that if they were 5-2, we'd be like, all right, Carson Wentz, get the heck out of the way, on to the next. Like, that's just the reality of the NFL. It's not just that that situation was mishandled. It's that they're 3-4, and that Chargers team is not that good. And if you go through the blowouts and the losses, the bad losses in KOC's history, week 18 to the Lions are good. The Rams in the playoffs, Rams are good. We go back a couple years, they lost 41-3 to Dallas. That was the number 1 offense in the league that year. That Chargers team's just okay. At best, they're a 500 team probably. They have a lot of injuries. And to lose and be non-competitive in that game, and also to lose against a mediocre Falcons team earlier and be non-competitive in that game, this is by far the first time, because even you guys remember the Nick Mullins games and how ridiculous they were, but they were competitive.
Oh, we remember the Nick Mullins games. You're talking to the world's biggest Nick Mullins supporter.
That's me. That's Nick Mullins is my Jared Goff to you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, almost the same. But Nick Mullins was a lot of fun in those games, and they were close, and you're one throw away that he throws behind Justin Jefferson from beating Detroit. So even when they were in trouble in 2023 and went 7-10, every game was close. They could have won each one of those games. That has not been the case for some losses this year, and your only wins are against a terrible Cincinnati team, a terrible Browns team. This is the first time that they have felt bad. And I will give you a crazy stat, which is they have only led for 6 quarters this year. They've only been ahead in a game for 6 quarters. They have played 28 quarters. You're bad. You're just not a good football team. Yeah. So he is facing a spot right now going into this game where he better start whispering or yelling or shouting or whatever it's going to take to get JJ McCarthy to look good, because the only thing that can paper over all the things that have gone wrong are that kid playing really well and interjecting some hope for either this season or at least into the future.
Matthew, shifting gears a little bit, it feels like maybe this defense doesn't have the same, when people talked about Brian Flores led defenses in years past, it was almost like the boogeyman, like, oh, geez, we got to play Brian Flores this week. And if the defense feels a little bit more maybe middle of the pack this year, and maybe that's just the virtue of playing with an offense that has struggled and is playing with a backup quarterback and a young quarterback. What are the biggest differences to you this year? How would you explain the defense maybe not living up to the standard that's been set?
The phrase of the year to me is trickle-down effect. So you have when anybody says that quarterback wins aren't a thing or whatever, I would just like to point them to this defense, that if they had really good quarterback play and they were playing from ahead all the time, this defense would be a lot different. but they've been playing from behind all year. They've been on the field all year because this offense has not been able to sustain drives. They're in the bottom 5 in time of possession. They're in the bottom 5 in plays per drive, which guess who is on the field then? That is the Vikings defense. So that's been part of it. When you don't succeed and get ahead and you have built your defense to send a lot of blitzes and to have interior pass rushers that were supposed to change the whole look of this thing. Well, that doesn't mean much if you're down 14-3. Like, who's afraid of a Brian Flores blitz? All right, we're up 14-3. We're just going to hand the ball off to Kamani Vidal or Saquon Barkley or whoever, and Detroit will do this with Jahmyr Gibbs. No one's afraid of a blitz when you're winning by 2 scores. Like, okay, bring it on. But when you're down by 2 scores and you have to throw every time, and the Vikings know that, then you can change all those coverages and you can send all sorts of rushes and it becomes a terrifying situation. The Vikings have not been in that spot all year to be able to do the stuff that Flores really does best. So it was built to be a front running defense. They've never run at the front. As I mentioned, 6 quarters. What defense is going to be good when your offense gets you ahead for 6 quarters? The other part is a lot of bets that have gone sideways. So you tend to think about it like if, and math people out there will be better at this than me, but if you have 10 different things that have about a 50% chance to hit and you need all of them to hit, your chances are almost 0 that they're all going to hit. And so getting older and coming off injuries, players like Javon Hargrave, like Jonathan Allen, not maybe the best bet. Letting go Cam Bynum, not maybe the best bet to slide in a backup player into his role. Bringing back Harrison Smith, as much as, I mean, I respect him through the roof, right? But age comes for everybody. And so they bring him back and expect him to be the same player, and he has not been so far this year. Their corners, they go with Isaiah Rodgers, who's never started before, Jeff Okudah, who you guys are very familiar with, that there's no evidence that you should rely on Jeff Okudah for anything. And he ends up being their number 3 cornerback and has just been roasted into eternity every time he's been on the field. I mean, that's like one of those things where, you know, they expected themselves to be able to just coach up a lot of players that they were not able to do. And it all plays into it too, that they've had some very serious injuries. Andrew Van Ginkel is one of the best players in the NFL. He's been out basically the whole year. Blake Cashman missed a bunch of time. Great linebacker. Harrison Smith missed a bunch of time. And that's the trickle down effect of it just gets harder and harder to make up for those things when you put so much into an idea of you're going to be dynamic, you're going to rush from the inside, you're going to have Van Ginkel lining up everywhere, and then all of a sudden you can't do those things. So the answers are kind of gestures at everything for why this defense has not been the same. And then also, just to add onto it, trading away Harrison Phillips, trading away Mekhi Blackman, and hurting your own depth by doing that, hard to make sense of. And those have hurt as well. And this is where it's going to be very difficult for them to stop the run on Sunday. It's going to be very difficult for them to cover anybody on Sunday.
So I want to get your thoughts on 2 quick things before we send you on the way here. Maybe we only have time for one. We'll stick with one. The NFC North, I think, and the NFC as a whole is really interesting right now. There are 5 teams in the conference who are 5-2 or better, or 6 teams, who are 5-2 or better, 7 teams with 5 wins. And there's a ton of teams who are kind of nipping at the heels, like very much still alive. Chicago, Carolina, Dallas, Atlanta. What are your thoughts on this NFC race as a whole from an outsider's perspective? Where do you see the Lions and Packers in terms of caliber of teams? Who do you think is going to come out on top there? What do you see from a third party perspective?
For me, it's like a tier type of system where I don't think that you can look at these teams right now with this sample size and say, oh, well, Green Bay is clearly better than Detroit. Week 1 is weird. I also don't think you could say, oh, Detroit is clearly wildly better than Philadelphia, or that the Rams are wildly better than. I think those 4 teams for me are the standout right now. You would put them at the top of the NFC: Philadelphia, Green Bay, Detroit, and the Los Angeles Rams. And then the next level down is, I still want to see more from the Seattle Seahawks, for example, like kind of prove it to me. And then after that, I think that there's another pretty big drop off of, hey, let's all just hope that we make the playoffs. And I might even throw Tampa Bay in the, like, they're going to make the playoffs because they'll win that division, but I might throw them in. I'm not even sure they're a real contender. They had to win games in a cartoonish way. We all got tricked by that in 2022 by the Vikings. If you have to win every game where you're not trailing at all, or where you're trailing the whole game and you kick a last second field goal or block a last second field goal or something, just hard to sell me on like, oh yeah, you can compete with a team like Detroit who has blown people out, or Philadelphia who's blown people out. I don't think that they're on the same level, but they'll be there in that mix. So maybe they're a second tier kind of by default. But I think we got to see a lot more to fully understand, because Detroit has had one good win, which is against Tampa Bay, and that's really it. And the rest of the schedule has kind of fallen in a different way than any of us expected from that AFC North. And even when you look at Green Bay, like, do they have a crazy awesome win? Well, it's against Detroit week 1. That's week 1. They tied against Dallas. And then, hey, they beat a bad Steelers team that's leading that division by default. And, they beat Cincinnati, but kind of barely. And so I think everybody's had their reasons to look at their team. I think it was Greg Rosenthal of NFL.com who said, like, I listen to a lot of local podcasts to get some insight, and everyone hates their team. Like, it's kind of been that way. But I think where Detroit is at is probably the best argument in terms of being the best team in the NFC. And if they smash the Vikings face in, I think it will be even more clear. But there's still challenges to go, including another game against Detroit against Green Bay, that will be more telling for Detroit as we go down the stretch.
All right, Matthew Coller, thank you so much for joining us today. Where can people find you? Where can people find the show? I know you're at purpleinsider.com, so if you're interested in the written word, go check them out there. But podcasts, Twitter, where else you at?
Actually, the purpleinsider.com houses it all. If you're a video person, an audio person, you like to...
One-stop shop.
If you can read, then that would be it. But even if you can't, that's the best part.
Yeah.
Even if you can't read, then
let's not assume. We're listening to a podcast right now.
That's right. So... there you go. Well, thank you guys for having me, and thank you, Nolan, for coming on my show. And can't wait to see you guys on Sunday, and maybe it will be better than we all think it's going to be.
Yeah, but probably not.
Division games are weird, right?
They are, yes. Yeah. Like Nick Mullins almost beat the Lions.
Nick Mullins, thank you for helping me push Nick Mullins propaganda. I needed that today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew.
All right. Thank you to Matthew Coller from purpleinsider.com for joining us for today's episode. Before we get into the back half of the show, we're going to talk about Aidan Hutchinson extension, some of the injury situations going on with the Detroit Lions, and then also take a look at some of our favorite bets from around the league this week. Coming up right after a word from our sponsor.
For 44 years, Varsity Ford in Ann Arbor has been more than just a dealership. We're a family, proudly serving yours. As one of the top volume Ford dealers in the world, we're proof that when you treat people right, they come back generation after generation. And now we make it easier than ever with complimentary pickup and delivery for both sales and service. So you can buy or service your Ford without leaving home. Varsity Ford, driven by family, built on tradition.
All right, we are back here, second half of the show. Thanks again to Matthew Coller from purpleinsider.com for joining us. Richard Silva, you went home over the weekend. Nice bye week. Picked up an illness. How are we feeling coming back from the bye?
I did, yeah. I'm a little bit under the weather still. Unfortunately, I had to skip locker room yesterday because I'm not trying to, derail this
trying
season.
To stop the spread.
Yeah, I'm not trying to get anybody sick. But no, yeah, it was good. I went home to New York, visited my family, and then my sister ran her first marathon ever.
Congratulations.
So watched her do that. So she finished in, her watch said 4 hours and 1 minute, but the little tracker in her in the penny that she was wearing said 4 hours and 6 minutes. So we'll just call it 4 hours, which she was pleased with. So it was good to see her do that.
Today will be a little bit of a shorter episode than usual, just because we don't have a recent game to talk about. But obviously, Aidan Hutchinson news, that gives us quite a bit to chew on.
Just 4
years, $180 million. Sounds like $140 million guaranteed. Sounds about right. I mean, we were kind of once Micah Parsons reset the market in the way that he did, I was less confident that Hutch was going to beat his number. But ultimately $45 million, about pretty much what I expected. If he had waited toward the end of the season and then maybe picked up a Defensive Player of the Year award, or maybe an AP nod or something like that, or an All-Pro nod, things could have been different. But ultimately, the Lions get it done before he's able to do any of that, and it probably saves them $5 million per year on the back end by getting it done now, as opposed to maybe the upcoming offseason.
I think it's a deal that makes sense for everyone, right? Hutchinson, yes, perhaps he could have made himself a little bit of more money had he waited until the end of this year, and he continues this pace that he's on. He's got an NFL high 48 pressures, and that's despite having the bye week. I think about half the teams in the league have had their bye week at this point, so he still leads regardless of that. He's got the 6 sacks. Let's say he finishes with, 15 sacks and 100 pressures. Sure, yeah, maybe he could have made himself a little bit more money. But as we saw last year, injuries can happen at any point. So he cashes in now. He punts on whatever it would have been, an extra $2 to $5 million per year, to sign this massive deal now. And I've never made that type of money in my life, but I'd imagine the difference between 180 million and 190 million is probably 10 million is a lot of money. But with $180 million, you're probably pretty set. He's the 7th Lions draft, Brad Holmes draft pick to reach a contract extension, a multi-year contract extension, because Levi Onwuzurike reached the second deal, but it was just a 1-year deal for like $4.5 million. The 7 Lions that have reached multi-year deals: it's Aidan Hutchinson, it's Penei Sewell, it's Aleem McNeil, it's Amon-Ra St. Brown, it's Derek Barnes, it's Jameson Williams, it's Kirby Joseph. It's 7 of Detroit's first 15 draftees of the Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell era. It's pretty difficult to start any better than that with your first 2 draft classes, about half of them being hits that you signed to, lucrative contract extensions, which signals how good of players that they are, that are in all 7 of their cases starting caliber players. And in multiple of those cases, Penei's, Hutchinson's, St. Brown's, Kirby's are top of market guys, best, but potentially best in the league, top 3 at that position. The Hutchinson deal is just the latest signal of how impressive this rebuild has and currently remains and is ongoing.
You mentioned Aleem McNeil. He has been out for most of the season. Came back against Tampa. Hutchinson ends up with a season high 12 pressures. I'm wondering if there was something in Lions land that they saw that and they went, oh boy, Aleem McNeil is really opening things up. You know what, Mike McCartney? We'll take the deal. Take the deal. Whatever the number was, whatever the last number was that you offered, we'll take it, because Aleem McNeil really opened things up for Aidan Hutchinson, and Marcus Davenport's able to come back. We talked about it last week. Just the ceiling of this defensive line, not just as a unit, but also the individual players and how they're able to play off each other.
No doubt. And I mean, even with Aleem on the field, because obviously, yes, like Aleem and Hutch, like hand in hand, they help one another. But also, even with Aleem on the field, he was still getting chipped by running backs and tight ends and wide receivers that I mentioned on that last pod. But like Sterling Shepard didn't even run a route on one play. He was just there to help the right tackle, try to defend.
They're max protect.
They were max protecting with Sterling Shepard, veteran receiver Sterling Shepard, trying to stop Aidan Hutchinson. Even beyond, yes, being helped by Aleem,
5'10", 194-pound receiver.
Right. Even with Aleem opening things up for him, he was still the focus of attention for that Bucs offensive front, and it just really didn't matter. He didn't have a sack, but you saw it. I mean, he was moving Baker off his spot the whole game, and if he's healthy, he is as he's in this tier as good as anyone. I don't know if I'd say he's better than Micah Parsons, but they're in the same class. They're in the same tier. On any given week, he can be the best pass rusher in the NFL, and that's why he just made the money that he made.
100%. I think it's a great point. We just brought up Davenport. I think it's a good segue into some of the news that came out about him this week. Dan Campbell basically saying yesterday there's no updated timetable for return. He had a chest injury in week 2. Landed him on injured reserve. He's eligible to come back to practice, playing games, all that. But Dan Campbell said no timetable for return. The only thing he knows is that he's very confident that they're going to get him back at some point this year. I almost wonder if they're like kind of punting on him returning in like the regular season at all. And I don't know if that's a strategy that a team would use, but like I feel like it would kind of make sense of like, oh, hey, this pass rush is pretty good. How sick would it be if we just added you like first game of the playoff, like divisional round. Hey, here's Marcus Davenport. I don't know. Like in hockey, that's a big thing, the long-term injured reserve, but that's more of a salary cap manipulation tool. I don't know. It'd be interesting.
I imagine again, just pure speculation. I would imagine it's probably not like a, hey, shelf you to the playoffs thing, but it might be a extreme caution type of thing where, like, if the Super Bowl was tomorrow, maybe perhaps Marcus Davenport could come back and push himself to play and, marginally risk some injury. But there's no reason for them to do that right now. There's no reason for him to do that right now. Like you mentioned, the pass rush is strong as is with Hutch, with Al-Quadin Muhammad, with Aleem back. I think you can survive without him, and not think you can. We just saw it for the past couple of weeks and last season. So yeah, I imagine it's a thing of let's just really take our time and not rush this back. There's no reason to do that. Try to get him to as close as 100% as possible. So if he does come back in week 15 or 16 or 14 or whatever it may be, that hopefully, fingers crossed, he does stay healthy for the last month of the season, plus whatever playoff run might be coming in the future.
Yeah, like if he had a literal health bar, like in a Mortal Kombat video game, he's at like 91%. Just let him get to 100.
Right.
Just let him get to 100. Exactly. There's no reason to send him back out there with 91%.
Yeah, exactly.
With this Hutchinson deal, by the way, the Lions' latest round of necessary contract extensions is over. They had Jameson Williams, they had Aidan Hutchinson, they had
Kirby.
Derek Barnes, they had Kirby Joseph, a lot of guys to kind of get under contract, and there are still some guys who are on expiring deals. Malcolm Rodriguez, Josh Pascal, guys who were drafted, in some cases, like the case of Pascal, relatively high, but still haven't gotten their next contract, but don't really expect them to. So I think this is a kind of like a resetting of the ledger in some way, where it's like, okay, we can finally move past the 2022 draft. Next on the horizon, this 2023 class, and I don't know if you guys heard, it might be Brad Holmes' best yet. You got Jahmyr Gibbs, you got Jack Campbell, you got Sam Laporta, three guys who I think, like Gibbs and Laporta, I think going into the season had an argument for being a top 3 player at their position, and Jack Campbell so far is playing like it. Never mind Brian Branch, who has been one of the league's best safeties since he entered the league. All 4 of those guys are going to be eligible for their second contracts next March. So that's on the horizon. That's a little bit of ways away, but we did kind of close the book on this 2022 class and the extensions that would need to come from it.
Brad Holmes, enjoy the next 5 to 6 months of not having to answer questions of, are you guys working on this extension? Because it is going to start right back up again.
Right.
Those 4 players, the top of that 2023 class is, I'd put it up against any 4-pick stretch in like recent, not only Lions history, just NFL. Like, I'm not going to say NFL history, but recent memory, because Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Campbell, Sam Laporta, Brian Branch, hit, and like massive hits at each of them. It's crazy.
And like if you just take positional value off the table, like that case is like 1,000 times stronger. But even like that aside, if you just look at the sheer production and how those 4 players have contributed to winning football games, yeah, 100% agree with you.
Especially with the way that Jack Campbell has been playing this year, where I remember going into the season, I was not prepared to say that he was the best linebacker on the team. I still gave that crown to Alex Anzalone. I am ready to shift the crown onto Jack Campbell's head. I think he is very clearly the best linebacker on this team, and he's incredible, and he is making Brad Holmes's budgeting life more difficult. I would imagine.
Yeah. All right, let's go through some injury updates, because we've got some moving, we've got some shaking. The Lions secondary is getting a little bit healthy here. Brian Branch back in practice, coming back from his suspension, and we should actually talk about that. It appeared to be a pivotal moment in his life. Rich, I know you weren't there when Brian Branch gave his press conference after practice yesterday, but basically just saying that reiterated his apologetic stance and said that he shouldn't have done what he did to Juju Smith-Schuster on that fateful night at Arrowhead Stadium. And he feels terrible about it. He really appreciated all the support from his teammates who wore Brian Branch jerseys to the game. Some of the coaches did too, which I didn't really immediately recognize. Jim O'Neill, Deshae Townsend, Dre Thompson, sound like those 3 guys all wore Brian Branch jerseys to the game. So that's pretty cool. Ultimately, though, the incident encouraged Brian Branch to get baptized. So that's fun. He said it was something that he'd been meaning to get around to But after this incident, he said he felt like he needed to turn over a new leaf and find God. So congratulations to Brian Branch. He's getting baptized today, Wednesday, as the day we record this.
Yeah, it was more of the same from Branch, like we've talked about before, that whenever, he talks to us, whether it's individually or in front of a microphone with a bunch of cameras everywhere, he is like the most nice and respectful, and he what's the word I'm looking for? He takes accountability for the things that he does. Like I forget if I mentioned this on the podcast right after the Chiefs game or whatever. I saw people online being when Branch first apologized for the Juju punch and then gave his reason for why he punched Juju, or excuse me, not punched, open hand slapped. Um, People were like, if your apology comes with an explanation, then it's not a real apology. I don't buy that. Like, I think you can be sorry and then also explain, here's why I lost my cool. I shouldn't have. I apologize. But here are the reasons that led to that. That's really besides the point. But yeah, no, good for Brian Branch for in his head, or in his going off what he said, turning a new leaf. He has said that before. So we will see. we will see if he's able to keep his cool. Dan Campbell talked about it, or excuse me, Brian Branch talked about what Dan Campbell told him, which is basically, guys are going to try to rage bait you. Don't retaliate. And we'll see if he's able to not retaliate.
Yeah. Interesting parallel storyline that's happening with our little podcast, and
Nolan tries to rage bait me a lot in my bye week resolution. Dan Campbell's bye week resolution was to convert more on third downs. My bye week resolution is to not be baited by Nolan into arguments. I don't want him to get me going like he's done through the first 7 weeks.
He told me that the other day, and then within 3 minutes, probably less than that, it was actually immediately I baited him into an argument. So
the Athletics Colton Pouncey told me that whenever you try to bait me, just to put on imaginary headphones. So that's what I'm doing. I'm putting on imaginary headphones over my actual headphones.
Yeah, you actually are wearing headphones. So there we go. All right, sticking with the secondary. Kirby Joseph, not a practice. That's the big question mark right now. It feels like we have some semblance of a timeline for DJ Reed, who was not back in practice yesterday, but was working off to the side with trainers, which is a positive update. Avonte Maddox came back to practice yesterday. Safety Daniel Thomas came back to practice this week. But Kirby still a little bit up in the air. According to Dan Campbell from 97.1 said, look, he's improving, but he still has got a little bit to go here. So we'll know more in the next couple of days, but he's better than he was before we left for the bye. I don't really know if that's super encouraging testimony about Kirby Joseph's knee, but it is an update. So there you go.
And if nothing else, you've got a couple safeties now at your depth spots with Thomas Harper and Eric Hallett that you kind of feel comfortable playing.
That was the funniest part of Brian Branch's press conference yesterday. Somebody was like, how was it to watch a game? He's like, it was so difficult. Like, I couldn't even watch the game live. I'm just so eager to get back and stuff like that. And then everybody was like, hey, what'd you think of the performance? Like when you watched it on film? And he's like, yeah, that's part of the reason why I was excited to get back. He goes, they played better as a unit than we did the whole season. I was like, I got to get back out there. Brian Branch going to get Wally pipped by Eric Hallett.
He's going to take his job.
Funny stuff. The secondary is getting healthy. Taron Arnold sounds like he should play against Minnesota this weekend, which is a huge bonus going up against that receiving core, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, all those guys. So that'll be interesting to watch. How does he bounce back from this injury? Because he was probably having one of the best games of his career when he got hurt.
Yeah, he said he's leaving because, again, I was not there yesterday, but from what I saw, he said he's pretty much coaching staff's hands, right? Like pretty much said, if coach staff wants me to play, I'm ready to play.
Taylor Decker, offensive tackle. Not a great update coming out of the game the other against Tampa last week, where Campbell was like, "Oh, it was tough to get through it." So I honestly didn't know what the situation would be when we came back from this bye week on Decker. He was at practice this week. He was out there on Monday. He was out there yesterday. It's expected that he'll be out there again on Thursday. So that's a good sign because, like I said, didn't necessarily have the highest level of confidence that he was going to be on the practice field when they got back from the bye.
For sure, yeah. I mean, he's expressed frustration all season long, and I'm sure that frustration continues. But I would imagine practicing as much as he's been this week is also a good sign.
Last couple injury notes here. Running back Sione Vaki, he has missed basically the entire season, first with a hamstring injury and then returned in week 3, immediately suffered a groin injury and has not played since. He was back at practice this week. There is hope that he will return against Minnesota, so that's positive news on his front as well. And then did I mention Malcolm Rodriguez? He's back. I think that's pretty big. The Lions put Zach Cunningham on injured reserve during the bye, and the prospect of having to do that is not ideal, but the timing of it kind of works out to where you're going to get Malcolm Rodriguez back soon, and they'll probably play not too different of a profile or whatever.
Yeah, and also going to help on special teams, I would imagine, because that's become Malcolm's bread and butter a little bit here over the last few seasons.
Yeah. Those are the injury notes that we have.
Muhammad was also absent from yesterday.
Yes. That is probably one of the bigger things to watch going into the rest of the week here is Al-Quadin Muhammad practicing. We did not get an injury report yesterday, so no known ailment that he's dealing with, but I believe I saw him in the locker room, so he's around, but just wasn't at practice yesterday. And then CJ Gardner-Johnson, old friend, signing with another old friend, the Chicago Bears. That's a pretty funny reunion. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson traded from the Eagles to the Texans over the offseason, released by the Texans, signed by the Ravens, cut by the Texans, signed by the Bears. And you know what? It didn't work for those other people, but maybe it'll work for the Bears.
I think you tweeted it, right? Old friends in new places.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Anything else that we got to talk about? Anything from yesterday that caught your attention or anything like that?
No, not particularly. I think coming off the bye week, there isn't much news. There isn't much leftover news from the week before. So it's all looking ahead, looking forward, injury stuff, and I think we covered it.
All right. Let's move on to some picks here. We've got the Lions minus 8.5 against the Vikings. I am you know what? I went a little bit out on a limb against the Bengals a few weeks ago. Call them the stinky Bengals. I got to do it again. These are a stinky Minnesota Vikings team.
If I can push back a smidge, it's a division game. It's a division game. These games are
Vikings,
weird.
The Vikings don't beat the Lions.
These teams know each other. The Lions,
but they don't. But Kevin O'Connell's 5-1 against Dan Campbell. That doesn't mean anything to me.
1-5. Is it
1-5? That's what I meant. Yeah.
But
the only game they've won was the first game of 2022 when the Lions were the stinky Detroit Lions.
True, but again, that game in Minnesota last year, I know it's not in Minnesota this time, but that game in Minnesota last year, the Lions basically had to walk it off. That was when Jake Bates debuted.
That was a much different team.
The We Bring the Boom. That was his little celebration, I think, after that game. I'm just saying that division games are weird. These teams know each other. They're very familiar with one another, the personnel, the coaches, the tendencies. I'm not ready to call it a blowout. I'm picking
maybe the Lions. The Lions have good Vikings number, like the good Vikings number. I can only imagine what they're going to do to the bad Vikings. You're right, and it's the NFL. And any given Sunday, anybody can show up and beat another team. That is 100% on the table. To be quite honest, during that game against the Bengals, when I was calling them stinky the whole week, I was a little bit nervous because they weren't beating them as bad as I thought they would. And I was
they were for 3 quarters.
They were for 3 quarters, and then they started to come back, and I was like, man, people are going to yell at me, for taking them too lightly. But I'm going to do it again. They still won that game by 13 points. I'm going to do it again. I think this game is a blowout, like of epic proportions. I think Kelvin Shepard's defense is going to eat J.J. McCarthy and that broken Minnesota Vikings offensive line for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I think that Jared Goff is going to do what he always does against Brian Flores and just string together completions. And maybe it doesn't look like it always does. Maybe he's not as good. Maybe they don't put up 31 points. But I think they're going to be in complete control of this game from start to finish. And I don't really ever think it's going to be in doubt. Again, egg on my face if I come on this podcast on Sunday night and I say, well, I was wrong, but I don't think I'm going to be.
31 points is what I'm going to have the Lions at. I'm going to say Lions 31, Vikings 20. So a handedly controlled win, or however you want to say it. But I don't know if I'll go as far as saying the blowout of epic proportions. I'll say Lions 31, Vikings 20. So the Lions cover the 8.5 point spread is my pick here.
I'm going 35-10.
Okay.
Lions. And that's me being like conservative. Like I want to be disrespectful, but I'm not going to.
For as much as I push back, like I will say like that is possible. Like I don't want to rule that out. I just said I'm not confident in saying that is all.
100%. Like, and I think like your logic is correct, but I think the Lions kind of supersede logic sometimes.
That's
like
fair.
their record against the spread, I've mentioned it time and time again, unbelievable. They're like 750 winning percentage against the spread. It's insane. So this team can and will blow out any bad team in its path. And I think the Vikings are a bad team right now with a lot of dysfunction, without an identity, and without really any sort of confidence that their starting quarterback is going to be able to go in and win them a game. So we shall see what happens there. Packers minus 13.5 against the Panthers. Packers coming off a pretty commanding win over the Steelers that was close for the first half, but then they really pulled away in the second half. I got the Panthers. The Packers have not been able to put away these middle of the pack to lower tier teams. And this could be different. I think Andy Dalton's going to be playing again. But I don't know. Packers are a team that lets the other team hang around outside of last weekend.
That's pretty much my thoughts as well. I'm going to pick the Packers to win, but 13.5 points is a lot of points for a team that is flawed, but I don't think is terrible in Carolina. So I'm going to pick Packers to win, but by less than 13.5 points.
The Bears are minus 2.5 at the Bengals. I think the Bengals, to your point about the right, like anything can happen in a weird divisional game. They come out against who they play on Sunday Night Football 2 weeks ago or Thursday Night Football.
The Bengals.
Yeah. Oh, we lost Rich. I guess I'm going solo here for a second. So the Bengals came out a couple weeks ago, and they beat, I believe, it was the Browns, maybe? I thought it was the Browns. This is great podcasting here, folks. I apologize. They lost to the... Oh, here he is. He's back on stage. There we go. Thank you, Richard, for rejoining the program here.
They played the Steelers on Thursday.
They played the Steelers on Thursday Night Football. To your point about weird divisional games, that was one of them. And the Bengals came out with a win, and they come out last week against the Jets, and they give them their first win of the season by allowing 39 points. I don't think the Bengals are a good team. I think they got a little bit of a boost from Joe Flacco arriving, but I think that can only last so long. My only concern is that, like, on a week-to-week basis, it is liable to just, like, show up like Magic Flacco. So that's a little bit of a concern here, but I think the Bears are on an upswing. I think they have been, outside of that Baltimore game, a team on the rise, and I think they're going to come in here and get the win and cover. It's only 2.5, so.
I also agree with everything you said. We're pretty locked in this week. On our
you and me, pal, we're pretty locked in.
Yeah, the Bears had won 4 straight going into that Ravens game, and granted, over those 4 games, excuse me, they had 15 turnovers forced, takeaways. So, I think some of that is like smoke and mirrors, where I don't know how real that 4-0 stretch is, because turnovers are fickle unless you're like a real ball hawk like Kirby Joseph or any of those guys. But I am going to pick the Bears on this one as well. We are in lockstep with all 3 of our picks so far.
There we go. All right. What was your best bet of the week?
My best bet was the 49ers minus 2.5 at the Giants. I just think that the Giants season, as much as I think they're like a plucky team that can kind of get after anybody in any given week, it might be coming off the rails a little bit. And that's kind of I don't want to say no fault of their own, because, the roster is built in a flawed manner.
It's the fault of their own.
Yes. But shoot, man, Giants fans really can't have anything nice. Oh, you have this elite receiver that is pushing for top 10 and maybe perhaps higher in the league. Oh, he tears his ACL. He's done for the year. Oh, you have this awesome running back that is just, the heart and soul of your team. And at the very least, if you're not going to win, he's going to make things fun, and he's tough and he's awesome. He breaks his ankle, so he's done for the season. It's Giants fans, it seems, can't have anything nice. And I have appreciated the 49ers, kind of like the Lions last year, where in my brain, once they lost Bosa and Warner, I was like, okay, goodbye 49ers. Like, not going to think about you anymore. They've been, doing it without them, and we'll see if that continues as the season goes on. And as the playoffs arrive, but they've impressed me so far in their games without them, and I think 2.5 points is not a big enough spread for this game, even though it's in East Rutherford. So I'm going to pick the 49ers as my best bet.
The interesting thing about the Giants is that it sucks. Like the Scatterbo injury, that objectively was really, really disappointing to see. But I almost wonder, like, if ultimately the way that things have transpired, and I know it's probably not cool to think this way, but like, I think Malik Neighbors and Cam Scatterbo not playing for the rest of the year obviously lowers their ceiling. It lowers the excitement. It might even lower like just the mood and vibes of the team, like on game day and throughout the week. But I almost wonder if it's like going to result in the Giants being in a better spot in the long term, because you're not going to get like this fake little run, most likely, where like these guys are balling out and like Brian Dable and Joe Shane keep their jobs. And then it's like a whole nother offseason of turmoil. And then they start, 1-3 next year. And then Dable and Shane get fired. And then you're restarting everything again. Like ultimately, like whatever bad happens to this Giants team for the rest of the year, and like just in terms of wins and losses, I think is probably going to be a good thing for the Giants organization going forward, even if it is not great for Brian Dable and Joe Shane.
Sure. Yeah.
Little Giants talk on the pod here. This is the segment just for Richard's dad.
My dad was not happy. I was with him on Sunday for the Giants-Eagles game, and it was late in that game, and we were together and we're watching. And I forget what it was. It might have been the Jahan Dotson touchdown, the long, 50-yard touchdown. And my dad was like, hey, if the Eagles score on this drive, like, I'm probably just going to take a nap. And then the Jahan Dotson did that, and he was like, all right, good night.
Yeah. All right, my best bet of the week is the Ravens -7.5 at the Dolphins. Ravens, a little bit of an up and down team. Maybe, if they were playing anybody else but Miami, this would be a spot where I'm maybe looking to fade them coming off a big win over the Bears last week. But Lamar could play. 7.5 is not a lot of points. The Dolphins are coming off a massive, massive win that they probably weren't good enough to justify. So I'm gonna go with the Ravens, because I think this spread is actually way too low. I don't even know what it is now, but 7.5 is just it's not enough.
That win over the Bears without Lamar Jackson last week is really huge for the Ravens, because you win a game, it's good, but it's the difference between
analysis. This is why the people show up.
Being 3 games under 500 versus 5 games being under 500. You know what I mean? And then now you're getting Lamar back. Excuse me. And all of a sudden you play the Dolphins, you play the Vikings, you play the Browns, you play the Jets, you play the Bengals in a row. Those are all 5 kind of like sputtering teams.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly,
we back to 500, baby.
Not only 500. Should be favored in all 5 of these games. You take care of business, assuming health and all that. You're 7-5 after starting 1-5. It's pretty incredible. They might be able to sneak back and take the division from the Steelers, which is crazy.
I'm pretty sure they're even money to win the division right now. Let me look it up.
Which is crazy considering the start. Excuse me, that the Steelers had, which is what was it, 4-0 or what was it? It was 1, 2, 3, 4-1. The Steelers were to start the season. With a win over New England, by the way, that's a good team, and they have since been 1-2.
The Baltimore Ravens at 2-5 are currently the clear front runner to win the NFC North, according to FanDuel. They're -125. Pittsburgh, who is sitting at 4-2, I believe, 4-3. They are +185. So that just goes to show you how much faith they have in these Ravens, but the lack of faith that they also have in these Steelers. So
right.
That's fun.
Shall we close with the blind rank?
Yes, let's go to the blind ranking to close us off. By the way, I said this was going to be a shorter episode. It's going to be right about the same length as all the other episodes. So that's just how it goes.
All right. I'm pretty sure I've done this category before, but it was a good one, and it gives us an opportunity just to talk about dudes.
All right.
So I'm going to do players that have played on both the Lions and Vikings in their careers. And you know what? I don't want you, because I feel like it kind of makes it easy if you just rank what they did with the Lions. I want you to rank their careers in totality.
Okay. The body of work.
The body of work. And the first guy that I'm bringing up The Lions saw him not too long ago. Teddy Bridgewater.
Teddy Bridgewater, great guy. One of those guys who I only covered him for a year, and some change. Obviously, he came back after Christmas last year. A guy who I will always be like, it's cool that I got to cover him for a year. Just a world-class guy. If you talk to anybody on that team, so many of the young guys talking about how he helped them with their careers and just learning how to be a pro and all that stuff. That being said, journeyman quarterback, and so I don't want to rank him too high. I'm debating between 3 and 4, and I think I'm going to put him at 4 because he was a backup with the Lions. Could have been something with the Vikings had that knee injury not hit at the worst time possible, but I'm going to put him at 4.
Sure. Number 2, I'm going to give you TJ Hawkinson.
Ooh, I wish I would have put Bridgewater at 3. I'll put TJ Hawkinson at 3. I think he's I don't even want to say slightly better than Teddy Bridgewater, but just seeing the direction things are going. I don't want him at 5. I don't want to take up that spot, but I am putting a pretty massive wedge in between 1, 2, and 5 here. So a little bit nervous. I'm holding out for an Adrian Peterson because I think it's coming, and that's going to take the top spot. So it's really just 2 and 5 who are available at this point.
I think Hawkinson above Bridgewater is fair.
Yeah. I mean, like started more games,
I was going to say, like for as much as we love Teddy and we both think he's awesome, how many years was he a starter? 1, 2, 3, 4? Like they started more than 10 games.
Yeah.
So I think Hawkinson above Teddy is perfectly reasonable. The third player I'm going to give you is Amir Abdullah.
Amir Abdullah. I'm going to put him at 5. Now I'm nervous about these last 2.
You should be.
Amir Abdullah. I actually remember covering I feel like his last game in Detroit. I'm going to do a quick Wikipedia machine search here, see what I can pull up. But I believe what I remember is I had just started helping cover the Lions on game day in 2018, and he fumbled either on a kickoff or just on regular offense. And it was like, it was one of my first ever games that I was ever covering the NFL. And it was like, okay. So this is November 6th, 2018. I covered my first NFL game in October of 2018. And I just remember the direction from Justin Rogers, my old colleague over at the Detroit News. He's like, go talk to Amir Abdullah about, fumbling that ball. And I was like, man, I'm nervous, but did it. And you know what? Better for it. And he was waived a couple days later. So there you go.
Better for it. Yeah. He,
and I was just talking about it the other day. He's played like 11 years in the league. Like the fact that he's still in the league right now is like phenomenal.
Yes, absolutely.
He was making plays on Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah. Against, what was it? That's 3 days ago. He had 2 carries for 5 yards, 1 catch for 3 yards. I mean, no, like
making plays is a little bit overstating it.
No, he also had a tackle.
There we go.
But the fact that, like you said, the fact that he's just still in the league at this point is good for him. Like, he was also a really good kick returner for a hot minute, or punt returner.
I want to say that's when he fumbled. I'm trying to find that. We can move on, but
okay. I've got 2 more guys for you here. I'm trying to think of which one I want to give you first. I'm trying to throw you the best curveball I can.
Okay.
Second to last guy I'm going to give you, quick reminder, we have spots 1 and 2 open, is Zadarius Smith.
Oh, okay. I'll actually take that. Zadarius Smith, really good pass rusher when healthy. Actually, probably, if I decided to like take one at the start of their career, probably take Zadarius Smith over TJ Hawkinson. If I had to take one at the end of their career, probably still taking Zadarius Smith over TJ Hawkinson. Zadarius Smith, a lot more years in the league. Sorry about the alarm going off twice during the podcast episode. That's my fault. Zadarius Smith, pretty good career in the league. Obviously retired a week or 2 ago. But I think still like more whatever the wins above replacement metric for football is. I bet he has more of that. So
no doubt.
I think I'm actually kind of crushing this.
I think you have crushed it so far through the 4 names I've given you. I mean, Zadarius Smith had 70.5 tackles, which is the 16th most in the league since he entered the league. So he's amongst the the better pass rushers of the last decade. Like he's
There
a
we
top 20 pass rusher of the past decade.
There we go.
The last name I'm going to give you to go in your number 1 spot.
If this isn't Adrian Peterson, I'm going to kill you.
Jeff Okudah.
No way. All right, whatever. Fine.
So
Yeah,
Nolan
nothing to say. Nothing to say. Jeff
Nolan-
Okudah 1, Zadarius Smith 2, TJ Hawkinson 3, Teddy Bridgewater 4, Mir Abdullah 5. That was good gamesmanship. Hat tip to you. Still mad though.
What's funny is Adrian Peterson was on my list, and I removed him for Amir Abdullah because I said Adrian Peterson is too easy of a number 1. So I think if you were to do this list again, I think exactly how you had it 2 through 4 is right, and then probably Okudah.
Probably shift down Jeff Okudah.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But for the first 4, I think you crushed it. So credit to you for that.
I feel I'm going to go ahead and speculate, and I'm not necessarily calling you a liar. I feel like you had two in your back pocket, Adrian Peterson or Jeff Okudah, one extreme, whichever one. If I had 5 open, you were going to throw me Adrian Peterson. If I had 1 open, you're going to throw me Jeff Okudah. You're going to tell me that's not the case. Everybody's going to believe you. You're a good guy. You don't lie, cheat, or steal. But I'm on to you. And,
I just put into our little group document that we have here. I text myself before we start the names. 10:46 a.m. Those are my 5 names. It's screenshotted in the Google Doc. Nolan can't call me a liar. I have receipts.
There we go. All right, fine. I can't call Rich a liar, but I'm going to anyways.
Headphones on.
Good list. Headphones on. Headphones
Can't hear
on.
you.
Can't be baited. All right. Thank you for listening to this episode. Thank you to Matthew Coller for joining us at the top of the show. Find us on Twitter. I'm at Nolan Bianchi. He's at Rich_Silva. We're on YouTube now. Probably should have mentioned at the top of the show, but our show is on YouTube. Search Gridiron Gang Detroit News on YouTube. We will come up. We have a nice video podcast for you guys. So if you're into that kind of thing, come check us out. Rate, review, subscribe really helps us grow, and we really appreciate it a lot. If there are no last words from Richard Silva, we'll see you next week. Same time, same place. Thanks for listening.